At 11:47 a.m. on Friday, June 13, 2025, a woman in a $6,000 Brunello Cucinelli pantsuit ordered track security to throw me out of the Watkins Glen paddock in front of my 14-year-old daughter, two members of her Supercar club, and a journalist from Hagerty Magazine. She didn't ask my name. She didn't ask why I was there. She looked at my work jacket, looked at the grease under my fingernails, looked at the teenage girl standing next to me holding a tool pouch, and decided that we were what she called clapped together scrap, trying to sneak into her invitational event. I didn't argue. I picked up the brake caliper bracket I had driven 35 miles to deliver to a friend racing in a completely different event on the south end of the facility, took my daughter's hand, and walked back to the parking lot. We drove home to Corning in silence. Then my daughter said the sentence that started everything that came next. "Dad, that lady doesn't matter, but she said Joseph was scrap. And he's not." Joseph is the name my daughter Riley gave to the 1969 Plymouth Valiant sitting in my workshop. She named it after her great-grandfather, who bought it new from a Memphis dealer in 1969 for $2,387. Joseph Beaumont kept that car for 53 years. He passed it to me 3 days before he died of a heart attack at age 71 in October 2022. I have spent the 4 years since rebuilding him from the frame up, with my daughter Riley working alongside me from the time she was 10 years old. Joseph has a 707 horsepower Hellcat drivetrain. He has a custom roll cage I welded myself using mil-spec materials I learned to handle during 12 years of military engineering work. He weighs 3,180 pounds, which is 200 pounds lighter than a Lamborghini Huracan Evo. On Sunday, June 15, 2025, exactly 72 hours after Veronica Hartley Pierce had me thrown out of her supercar show, I drove Joseph onto Watkins Glen International for the SEA Open Lap session. I turned a 1/5th lap. The fastest professional driver at her Empire State Supercar Coalition event, running a McLaren 720S in the same conditions, turned a 1:54. Her nephew Tristan, running a Lamborghini Huracan Evo, turned a 2:08. Joseph, the clapped-together scrap car, was 10 seconds per lap faster than every supercar at her event except one. This is the story of those 72 hours and what came after. Because what came after is the part nobody saw coming. Not Veronica, not her nephew, not the club she had built into a private status symbol over 15 years, and not me. Day 1. Friday, June 13, 2025. My name is Travis Beaumont. I'm 43 years old. I live in a single-story house on Pulteney Street in Corning, New York, with a 2-bay workshop attached to the back of the property. The workshop is the actual reason I bought the house in 2022 after my divorce was finalized. The bedroom doesn't matter. The kitchen doesn't matter. The workshop is where I do the work. I run a small business called Beaumont Performance Engineering. I specialize in pro touring builds, taking classic American muscle cars from the 1960s and 1970s and updating them with modern drivetrains, suspensions, and brakes to make them drivable as actual fast cars rather than just slow museum pieces. I have a waiting list of about a year. I do good work. I charge fair rates. I don't advertise. Before this, I served 12 years on active duty in the United States Army, from 2004 to 2016. I went to West Point and was commissioned as a second lieutenant in May 2004 at age 22. I served 2 deployments to Iraq, one in 2005, one in 2009, as a combat vehicle maintenance officer attached to armored cavalry units. I left active duty as a captain in 2016 and took a civilian engineering position at the Army's Tank Automotive Research, Development and Engineering Center, TARDEC, at the Detroit Arsenal in Warren, Michigan. I worked there for 6 years in combat vehicle survivability. I left in 2022 after my divorce. I'm telling you all of this because the woman in the Brunello Cucinelli pantsuit looked at me on Friday and decided I was someone who didn't belong in her paddock. My daughter Riley is 14. She lives primarily with her mother Sandra in Rochester during the school year and stays with me every weekend and full summers. She has been helping me in the workshop since she was 10. She is, by any honest professional assessment I am capable of making, better at precise mechanical inspection than approximately half of the working mechanics I have encountered in my adult life. She catches things other people miss. She thinks in 3 dimensions. She reads torque values and dial indicator measurements the way other kids her age read text messages. She has a small ratcheting socket wrench, 3/8-inch drive, blue-handled, that my father Joseph gave her on her 10th birthday in May 2021 before he died. She carries it in a leather tool pouch she takes everywhere. The pouch was his too. He gave it to her on the same day. He told her, "These are tools for a working person. You're going to be a working person. Use them well." Riley uses them well. On Friday morning, June 13, I had agreed to drop off a custom-fabricated brake caliper bracket to a friend named Edward Cross. Edward is 67 years old, retired from a career as a chemical engineer in Bath, New York, and he was running his 1965 Sunbeam Tiger in a small amateur alms event happening on the south end of the Watkins Glen facility. The brake bracket was a $230 job I had done as a favor over 2 weekends. I just needed to get it to him before his Saturday practice session. Drive up from Corning with Joseph on the trailer behind my 2018 Ram 2500. I had been planning to do a private test session with Joseph at Pocono Raceway the following Tuesday, and figured I might as well bring him to Watkins Glen since I was already going up. I parked the trailer in the paid spectator lot, $15 for the day, and walked into the facility carrying the brake bracket in a canvas bag, with Riley beside me. The Empire State Supercar Coalition event was happening in the main paddock on the north end. I had no intention of going anywhere near it. Edward's event was in the south paddock. The two paddocks are separated by about 400 yards. But to walk from the main entrance to the south paddock, you have to walk through the edge of the north paddock. It's the only pedestrian route in. That's where Veronica Hartley Pierce was standing. She was 52 years old, 5'7". Brunello Cucinelli pantsuit in oatmeal, the kind of beige that telegraphs old money without trying. She had a McLaren 720S parked behind her, the orange one she was famous for in club photographs. She was talking to 2 members of her board of directors and a woman in her early 40s carrying a Hagerty Magazine credential, who I would later learn was named Diana Stahl. I was walking past with Riley beside me. I would have walked through and never spoken to any of them. Veronica saw the work jacket. She saw the grease. She saw the teenage girl with the tool pouch. She made an assumption. "Excuse me, sir." I stopped. Stop beside me. "This is a private event. Are you a member of the coalition?" "No, ma'am. I'm walking to the south paddock to deliver a part to a friend who's racing in the Alms amateur event. I'm just passing through." "This paddock is for coalition members only." "I understand." I'm walking through, not stopping. "The pedestrian route from the main entrance goes through here." She looked at me. Her eyes moved from my face to my jacket to my hands to Riley's tool pouch and back to my face. The whole assessment took about 3 seconds. "What is your name?" "Travis Beaumont." "And what is your business at Watkins Glen today, Mr. Beaumont?" "I just told you, ma'am. I'm delivering a brake bracket to Edward Cross who's racing in the Alms event, and you came alone." "My daughter is with me." "Your daughter?" "Yes." She looked at Riley. Riley met her eyes. She did not look away. Veronica turned back to me. "Mr. Beaumont, I'm going to be very direct with you. This event is for actual automobiles, not whatever clapped-together scrap you would bring to it. I find it suspicious that you have arrived at a private event with a teenage girl carrying mechanics' tools, and I'm not comfortable with your presence in this paddock. I'm going to ask track security to escort you out." She turned and gestured to a uniformed security officer about 30 feet away. He started walking over. I felt Riley's hand tighten on the strap of her tool pouch. I had a choice in that moment. I could have explained, in detail, that I had served 12 years as a military officer with security clearance, that I had spent 6 years as a federal civilian engineer working on classified combat vehicle programs, that I had passed an FBI background check 3 times in my professional life. I could have explained that the brake bracket in the canvas bag was a precision-machined component I had fabricated for a 67-year-old retired chemical engineer. I didn't say any of that. I looked at her for about 4 seconds. Then I said, "Thank you for clarifying your position, ma'am. We'll leave." I turned around. I took Riley's hand. We walked back the way we had come. Diana Stahl, the Hagerty journalist, was writing in her notebook. The security officer escorted us as far as the parking lot. He was uncomfortable. He apologized quietly when we got to the truck. He said, "I don't know what just happened back there." I told him it wasn't his problem and shook his hand. I put the canvas bag with the brake bracket in the passenger footwell. Riley climbed into the passenger seat. I got in, I started the truck, I drove out of the parking lot. We drove 35 miles south on Route 14 back to Corning in silence for the first 20 minutes. Then Riley said it. "Dad, that lady doesn't matter." But she said Joseph was scrap, and he's not. I kept my hands on the steering wheel. "I know, Riley, and there's an open lap session at Watkins Glen on Sunday at 1 p.m. SCA. Anyone can run if they pass tech inspection." Edward told me when we were unloading the trailer in the parking lot. I glanced at her. "How do you know about that?" I asked him. "When?" "While you were checking the trailer hitch before we walked in, I asked Edward what events were happening this weekend. He told me about the Coalition event in the North Paddock and the Alms event he's running in the South Paddock and the ESCA open lap session on Sunday afternoon." I drove for another mile. Riley said, "Joseph is faster than every car at her event. You don't know that, I do know that. We tested him at Pocono Test Day in April. He pulled 134G in the corners. The Huracan Evo pulls 127. The McLaren 720S pulls 1.31. We have the numbers, I have all the data on my laptop." I looked at her again. She was looking straight ahead. "Dad, Grandpa would have wanted you to run him." I drove the rest of the way home without responding. At the workshop after dinner, I went out to look at Joseph. Riley followed me. I stood in front of the car. The Bahama yellow paint was perfect. Riley had hand-rubbed the wax onto the hood the previous weekend. I thought about my father. I thought about what he had said to me 3 days before he died, when he was in the cardiac unit at Guthrie Robert Packer Hospital in Sayre, Pennsylvania, with 72 hours left to live. He had said, "Travis, don't ever let anyone tell you that what you build with your hands isn't real." I picked up my phone. I scrolled to a contact I had not called in 11 months. Sergeant Major Hank Donovan, retired. He answered on the second ring. "Captain, Hank, what's wrong? I need help with something. Are you free tomorrow?" "Yes, can you be at my shops at 7 a.m.? I'll have coffee." "I'll be there." I hung up. Riley was standing in the doorway of the workshop. "You called Hank?" "Yes, we're going to do it." "Yes," she nodded once. She walked across the workshop. She put her hand flat on Joseph's hood. "Thank you, Joseph," she said. "We won't let you down." Then she went inside to bed. I stayed in the workshop until past midnight, pulling out every tool, every torque wrench, every dial indicator, every component I would need for the next 18 hours of work. Day 2 Saturday, June 14, 2025, Hank Donovan arrived at 6:53 a.m. Hank is 62 years old. He served 28 years in the Army. He retired as a sergeant major. He helped train me as a brand new second lieutenant in 2004, when I was 22 years old and had no idea what I was doing. He saved my career more than once in the years after that. He lives in Elmira, New York, about 30 minutes south of Corning. He still drives the same 2009 GMC Sierra he bought when he retired. He brought his own toolbox, his own coffee thermos, and a small bag with a sandwich for lunch that his wife Margaret had packed for him. He walked into the workshop, set his toolbox on the floor next to the lift, looked at me, and said, "Tell me what happened." I told him in about 6 minutes. Riley came down in her work clothes and a Carhartt jacket. She listened. Hank thought for a moment. He said, "We have 18 hours of work to do and 26 hours to do it in before you need to be on the trailer. Let's stop talking." He took off his jacket. He pulled out a pre-flight inspection checklist he had handwritten on a yellow legal pad during the drive-up from Elmira. He laid it on the workbench. He looked at Riley. "You're going to be my documentation officer. I need you to log every system we check, every torque value we confirm, every fluid level we verify. Can you do that?" "Yes, Sergeant Major." "Don't call me Sergeant Major. Call me Hank. We're in a workshop, not a motor pool." "Yes, Hank." "Good. Go get your laptop." She went to get her laptop. Hank looked at me. "Travis, yes. Are we doing this because you want to, or because you have to?" I thought about it for a moment. "Both. That's the right answer." We started. The next 18 hours were the kind of work that doesn't photograph well and doesn't make for easy storytelling. It was relentless, methodical, and quiet. Hank and I worked through the pre-flight inspection one system at a time. Riley sat at the workbench with her laptop and entered every value we called out, building a documentation trail that any racing tech inspector in the country would have respected. Coolant system pressure test, Held 30 psi for 15 minutes with zero loss. Fuel system pressure test, 64 psi at idle, 58 psi under load simulation, both within Hellcat factory specification. Engine oil, drained and refilled with 5 quarts of Pennzoil Ultra Platinum 5W40. The Dodge factory recommend fluid for the Hellcat. Riley logged the new oil filter part number. Transmission fluid. Tremex synthetic manual transmission fluid, 2.6 quarts. Confirmed full. Differential, Royal Purple 75W90, freshly changed 2 weeks earlier, confirmed full. Brake fluid. Modal RBF 660 racing brake fluid, bled all 4 corners until clear, confirmed full pedal feel. Tire pressure, Michelin Pilot Sport 4S, 32 psi cold front, 30 ps cold rear. Set with calibrated digital gauge. Wheel torque on 10 pound-feet on all 20 lug nuts, verified twice. Lug studs visual inspection passed. Roll cage visual inspection. Every weld checked against my original fabrication notes. All welds passed. Driver's seat mount. Torque to spec. Harness anchors verified. 5-point harness. SFI 16 certified, in-date verified. WindowNet SFI 27.1 certified, in-date verified. Master kill switch tested, functional. Fire suppression, SFI 7.1 system, charge pressure verified, lines verified. Driver gear, helmet, Stilo R2022, 5Fs, Snell SA22, in-date suit. Gloves, West Tech 1 Race, S. Osklulam, R. Shoeses. Hendai shoe Sparko RB strain date Ranpasnan 3 Vals, Wams, Brandon, Tharslu, it was Sandra. Riley had told her mother the previous evening about the Friday incident and the Sunday plan. I answered. Sandra was at her kitchen table in Rochester, drinking coffee. Travis. Sandra, Riley told me what happened. Yes. And Riley told me you're running the ska session on Sunday. Yes. Is this safe? Yes. I have full SFI safety equipment. The car has a full roll cage. The track has medical on standby. Riley will be in the paddock with Hank. She won't be on the track. Why are you doing this? Because Riley asked me to. There was a long pause. She told me what the woman said, about the car being scrap. She told me what Joseph means to her. Yes, Travis, be careful and take care of her. She thinks the world of you. I know, and tell Hank thank you. From me, I will. I hung up. Hank had been listening from across the workshop while torquing the front suspension upper control arm bolts. He didn't say anything. We kept working. At 3:47 p.m., Riley was on her back under the front of the car with a flashlight checking the steering linkage. Dad, yes, come look at this. I crouched down. She pointed at the inner tie rod end where it connected to the steering rack. There's a hairline crack on the upper surface of the housing. Look, here, where the light hits. I looked. She was right. It was a hairline crack, maybe a millimeter long, on the upper surface of the cast aluminum housing, in a location that would never have caught my eye in a normal inspection. If we had run the car at Watkins Glen with that crack, it would have failed under high G cornering. The car would have lost steering control somewhere in the S's. At 120 miles an hour, with a roll cage, I would probably have survived. The car would not have. And the lap time would have been 0. Riley had just saved both of us. I stood up. How did you see that? I just looked. Hank was standing at the workbench. He had heard us. He walked over. He looked at the crack with his flashlight. He stood up. He looked at Riley for a long moment. He said, Riley, I want you to remember this for the rest of your life. There are people who look at things, and there are people who see things. Your father is one of the second kind. So am I, and so are you. There are not many of us. The world needs you to keep being one of us. Riley nodded. I fabricated a replacement inner tie rod end from a mil-spec stock blank I keep in the workshop for situations exactly like this. The work took 2 hours. We had it installed by 6:20 p.m. At 9:42 p.m. Saturday evening, the shop phone rang. I answered. Mr. Beaumont. My name is Diana Stahl. I'm a senior automotive journalist with Hagerty Magazine. We met yesterday at Watkins Glen. I was the person standing behind Mrs. Hartley Pierce with the press credential. I remember. I'm calling because I tracked down your shop number through Edward Cross. I want to ask you one question. Go ahead. Are you going to be at Watkins Glen on Sunday? Yes. Are you running the 1969 Plymouth Valiant in the SACA open lap session? Yes. She was quiet for a moment. Mr. Beaumont, I have been covering automotive events for 14 years. I have never written a story about something I witnessed in a paddock the way I want to write a story about what I witnessed yesterday. I would like to be there on Sunday with a photographer. Off the record until you say otherwise. May I have your permission to document? I thought about it, yes, but not for me. Give one for Riley. She built half this car. If anything good comes from this, it should go to her. Understood. I hung up. After Riley went to bed at 11 p.m., Hank and I sat on the workshop steps with the rest of his coffee thermos between us. We talked about Iraq, briefly, about my father, about Joseph, about what Riley was becoming. Hank said, when she's 25, she's going to be running her own shop somewhere, and people are going to drive across 3 states to bring her their cars. I hope so. She is so. I didn't respond. We sat in silence for a while. End of day 2. Day 3. Sunday, June 15, 2025. We arrived at Watkins Glen International at 9:15 a.m. on Sunday morning. I drove the Ram with the trailer. Hank rode shotgun. Riley sat in the back seat with her tool pouch on her lap and her laptop in a backpack. Edward Cross was waiting for us at the south paddock gate. He had reserved a paddock spot for us. The spot was 8 pads down from his own pit area, which was a small folding canopy with his 1965 Sunbeam Tiger parked underneath. We unloaded Joseph from the trailer at 9:40 a.m. I went to the ZEC registration desk. I paid the $295 entry fee for the open lap session. I filled out the medical waiver. I provided proof of insurance and registration. I received my driver number 47, which had been my company commander's call sign in 2009 in Iraq, which was a coincidence or wasn't. The SCA tech inspector was a man named Walter Bradley. He was about 55, gray-bearded, wearing an SCA polo shirt. He walked around Joseph for the better part of 30 minutes. He checked the roll cage. He checked the harness. He checked the master kill switch. He checked the fluid levels. He pulled a small mirror to examine the underside of the chassis at 6 different points. He stood up at the end. Mr. Beaumont, this is one of the cleanest tech inspections I've done all season. Pass. He signed my tech sheet. I went back to the paddock. At 11:30 a.m., while we were waiting for the 1 p.m. session, a member of the Empire State Supercar Coalition wandered down to the south paddock. He was about 70 years old. White hair, neatly cut, polo shirt with the Coalition logo, khaki pants. The kind of man who looks expensively casual without trying. He saw Joseph. He stopped. He looked at Joseph for a long time. Riley was reviewing the ESSA flag protocol with the corner station marshal across the paddock. Hank was checking the trailer straps. I was wiping fingerprints off the windshield with a microfiber cloth. The man approached me. He held out his hand. My name is Charles Whitford. I'm a member of the Empire State Supercar Coalition. May I look closer? Travis Beaumont. Yes, please. He spent 15 minutes examining the car. He looked at the chassis welds. He looked at the suspension geometry. He looked at the brake calipers. He looked under the hood at the Hellcat with the custom intake plenum I had fabricated. He asked, where did you learn to fabricate? Army Tardec. Combat vehicle survivability. He was quiet for a moment. 2 tours in Iraq, 2005 and 2009. Then 6 years at the Detroit Arsenal as a civilian engineer. My son served. Same years. Same place. 3rd Armored Cavalry. I looked at him. Sir. I was with 1st Cavalry in 05 and 3rd Armored Cavalry in 09. I might have crossed paths with your son. His name was Daniel Whitford. He didn't come home. I held his eye, sir. It was a long time ago. We stood there for a moment. He said, are you running the open session at 1? Yes, sir. Would you mind if I stayed and watched? I'd be honored. He smiled slightly. He walked back to the paddock entrance and made a phone call. At 12:20 p.m., Tristan Pierce Hartley walked into the south paddock with 2 of his coalition friends. He was 29 years old, dark hair, expensive watch, the kind of jaw that has never been broken because nobody has ever stood close enough to it. He was filming on his phone the way his aunt had filmed nothing on Friday but had probably wanted to. He walked up to Joseph. He looked at the car. He looked at me. He turned the phone toward me. Are you actually going to drive that on the same track my Huracan just turned a 208 on? I'm going to drive in the SCA open session at 1 p.m. That session is separate from your coalition event. You'll get 1 corner in before that thing breaks. Riley had walked up. She was standing about 4 feet behind me, holding her tool pouch. She spoke. What's your best lap time at Watkins Glen? Tristan looked at her. He hadn't realized she was there. What? Your best lap time at Watkins Glen. Sunday, June 15th conditions. Your car. What is it? 2 minutes, 8 seconds. Joseph's projected lap time based on our simulation data from the Pocono test on April 11 is 1 minute, 58 seconds. He's faster than your Lamborghini by 10 seconds per lap. You should probably stop talking and watch. The two friends looked at each other. One of them laughed quietly. Tristan stared at Riley for about 3 seconds. He turned around. He walked out of the south paddock. Charles Whitford, standing about 20 feet away, made a small sound that was almost a laugh. Diana Stahl was at the edge of the paddock with her photographer Carlos Mendez. Carlos's camera had been quietly clicking for the last 30 seconds. At 12:50 p.m. I put on my suit. I put on my Hans device. I put on my helmet. I climbed into the driver's seat. She tapped the roof twice. "Be careful, Dad." "I will, Riley. Run a good warm-up lap. Don't push. We have 3 hot laps. The first one is just settling in." She smiled slightly. I drove Joseph out of the paddock and onto pit lane. There were 17 cars in the session. 2 Mazda Miatas, a Subaru BRZ, an M5 competition, a 2018 Corvette ZU6, a Porsche Cayman GT4, a Lotus Exige, a Ford Mustang Shelby GT500, 3 Honda Civic Toyota Supra, a Nissan GTR Nismo. The session started at 1 p.m. I took Joseph out for the warm-up lap, exactly the way Riley had told me to. I ran the lap in 2:18, slow, methodical, learning the surface temperature, listening to how Joseph was sitting on the tires. I came back around. The flag dropped for hot laps. Lap 1, I held back. I drove it at about 85%. That lap came out at 2:03. Lap 2 I pushed harder. The S's came up fast and Joseph went through them flat. The outer loop felt like Joseph was glued to the surface. The bus stop chicane was the only place I felt the weight of the car. Joseph is 3,180 pounds, which is light for a sedan but heavy for a track car. I came out of the toe of the boot and onto the front straight, the Hellcat pulling hard up through the gears. I crossed the line at 1:59. I could hear my own breathing inside the helmet. Lap 3. I gave Joseph everything. Through the S's I felt the rear come slightly loose and caught it without lifting. Through the outer loop the tires were singing. Into the bus stop I braked harder than I ever had with this car, and the Wilwood 6 pistons just held. Through the toe of the boot, the Hellcat pulled out of the corner, with the kind of mid-range punch that no naturally aspirated supercar engine has. Down the front straight, I held it flat. I crossed the line. I came around and lifted to cool the brakes. I came into pit lane. I stopped in front of where Hank and Riley were waiting. Riley was running toward the car before I had unbuckled the harness. 1:56, she said. 1 minute, 56 seconds. I pulled off the helmet. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." The SCA timing transponder confirmed it. 1:56.327. The coalition's fastest lap of the day, set by a professional driver named Matteo Brunetti, hired specifically to demonstrate Veronica's McLaren 720S to potential buyers at the event, was 1:54. Joseph, in the hands of an Army officer with no professional racing resume, had been 2 seconds behind a professional driver in a $300,000 supercar. The Lamborghini Huracan Evo that Tristan had been bragging about had been 10 full seconds per lap slower than Joseph. By the time I unbuckled and climbed out of the car, the south paddock had 30 or 40 spectators in it. People had walked down from the north paddock. Charles Whitford was at the front, applauding quietly. Edward Cross was beside him with tears in his eyes. Veronica Hartley Pierce was not among them. She arrived 20 minutes later. At 1:47 p.m., Veronica walked into the south paddock with 2 members of her board of directors and a man in a polo shirt who was not Walter Bradley. She walked straight up to me as I was talking to Riley by the trailer. "You have no right to be on this track." I turned to face her. I had taken off my driving suit. I was in a t-shirt with sweat marks on it. My hair was wet. "I'm in an SCA open session. I have proper registration and I passed tech inspection. The session is on track property the SCA has paid for. The coalition does not own this facility. I'm going to file a formal complaint with SCA. I'm going to ensure you are never permitted at any second in the state of New York again. You are a public safety risk." Diana Stahl was at the edge of the paddock with her phone recording. Charles Whitford was about 10 feet behind Veronica, watching. I looked at Veronica for about 3 seconds. "Ma'am, with respect, I have a 12-year military service record, including 6 years specifically in combat vehicle engineering at the Army Tank Automotive Research Center. The car I just ran on this track passed full SCA tech inspection 30 minutes before the session. I have not violated any rule. You are asking the SCA to ban me from public events at facilities the SCA does not own and at sessions the coalition does not control. Veronica opened her mouth. And I want to be very clear about one more thing. On Friday, June 13, at approximately 11:47 a.m., you publicly stated to me in front of multiple witnesses that this car was, quote, clapped-together scrap. That statement was recorded on the audio of multiple cell phone videos taken by your own coalition members. It was witnessed by a Hagerty Magazine journalist who is standing 40 feet behind you right now. It was witnessed by track security personnel. That statement, Mrs. Hartley Pierce, is defamation per se under New York common law, because you publicly disparaged my professional trade and craftsmanship in front of multiple witnesses, including a credentialed journalist, in a manner specifically calculated to harm my business reputation. Under New York law, statements that injure another person in their trade, business, or profession do not require proof of special damages. She went pale. I have already retained counsel. You will be receiving formal correspondence on Monday morning. I turned away. Riley was standing 4 feet behind me. She had walked up during the confrontation and stood quietly. I took her hand. We walked to Hank. Diana Stahl walked over. Mr. Beaumont, I need to publish this story. With your permission and Riley's, may I? I looked at Riley. She said, tell them about Joseph. Tell them about Grandpa. Diana nodded. Charles Whitford came over. He shook my hand. He gave me his business card. Mr. Beaumont, I have a 1970 Plymouth Cuda that has been sitting in my garage for 15 years. My son's name was Daniel, and he wanted to restore it together when he came home from his deployment. I have been waiting for the right person to find me. You found me. I want you to build it. I took the card. He shook Riley's hand. He said to her, young lady, when you finish high school and start studying mechanical engineering, and you will, I want you to come and intern with the Whitford Foundation. We fund engineering scholarships for children of veterans. You're going to be one of our scholars. Riley said, yes, sir. We loaded Joseph onto the trailer. We drove home to Corning. Aftermath, June 16 through September 26, 2025. On Monday morning, June 16, I met with Marlon Whitfield at his law office on Pine Street in Corning. Marlon is 56 years old. He served 22 years as an Army JAG officer. He has been practicing civilian law in Corning for 10 years. He charges fair rates and takes the cases he believes in. He took mine. We filed Beaumont v. Hartley Pierce in Schuyler County Supreme Court on Wednesday, June 18. The complaint alleged defamation per se under New York common law, with documented witnesses, video evidence, and a Hagerty Magazine journalist's contemporaneous notes from the original incident. On Tuesday, June 17, Diana Stahl's feature article published online on the Hagerty website. The title was, What I Watched at Watkins Glen This Weekend. It was 11,000 words long. It told the full story. The Friday humiliation, the Saturday preparation, the Sunday lap, Riley's role in the build, my father's history with Joseph, Charles Whitford's son who didn't come home. It went viral within the classic car community. Within 72 hours, it had been shared more than 200,000 times. By the end of June, I had received commission inquiries from 47 separate individuals. I accepted 6 of them, including Charles Whitford's 1970 Cuda. The total contracted work represented approximately $1.4 million in build budgets. Tristan Pierce Hartley was photographed at a Buffalo nightclub on the evening of June 22, with controlled substances visible in the background. The photos leaked to the Buffalo News. The Pierce family was now dealing with multiple crises simultaneously. In late July, Veronica's attorneys offered an initial settlement of $50,000. Marlon rejected it. Discovery proceeded through August. Marlon obtained documentation that Veronica had engaged in similar publicly humiliating ejections of 3 other individuals from coalition events over the previous 4 years. 2 of those individuals, a retired police officer from Buffalo named Frank Kowalski and a black female engineer from Syracuse named Renee Carrington, joined the lawsuit as additional plaintiffs. On August 22, the board of directors of the Empire State Supercar Coalition voted to remove Veronica Hartley Pierce as president by a margin of 9-2. Charles Whitford was elected interim president on a unanimous vote. On September 8, Veronica's attorney submitted a settlement offer of $625,000, with a formal public apology to be published in Hagerty Magazine and the Watkins Glen Express, and with permanent removal of the unilateral ejection authority from the coalition president's role. We accepted. The two co-plaintiffs received smaller settlements on the order of $75,000 each. After Marlon's fees and court costs, my net recovery was approximately $480,000. I donated $400,000 of that to the Whitford Foundation, designated for engineering scholarships for the children of veterans. I kept $80,000. I used it to pay off the remaining mortgage on the workshop and to open a 529 college savings account for Riley. On Wednesday, September 3, Riley started 9th grade at Corning Painted Post High School. She formally enrolled in the Industrial Technology pathway, focusing on automotive mechanics, welding, and engineering design. Her stated future plan, written on her 9th grade course selection form: to study mechanical engineering and then run Beaumont Performance Engineering with my father. On the evening of Friday, September 26, 2025, 3 months and 13 days after the day Veronica had ordered track security to throw me out of her paddock, I was working in the workshop. The first bay was occupied by Charles Whitford's 1970 Plymouth Cuda. The body was off the chassis. The engine bay was empty, awaiting the LS3 V8 we had ordered for the build. The Cuda had been Daniel Whitford's car. His name was painted in small script on the underside of the dashboard, where Charles had written it himself in 2008, when Daniel was 22 years old and home on leave from his first deployment. Joseph was in the second bay. Riley was at the workbench with a laptop open in front of her. She was writing an essay for English class about a piece of poetry by Robert Frost called The Death of the Hired Man. The line she was citing was, "Home is the place where, when you have to go there, they have to take you in." She looked up at me. "Dad, Grandpa would have liked Charles." "Yeah, kiddo. He would have. He would have liked the Cuda project, too. He would have." She went back to her essay. I stood looking at Joseph for a long time. The Bahama yellow paint. The slight wear marks Riley had put on the door handle from years of opening it as a small child to climb into the passenger seat while her grandfather worked. The hand-painted name on the dashboard that nobody outside this workshop would ever see. I thought about my father, who had bought this car new in Memphis in 1969 and kept it for 53 years. I thought about the woman in the Brunello Cucinelli pantsuit who had decided, on a Friday morning in June, that the car my father had passed down to me was clapped-together scrap, and that my 14-year-old daughter and I were not the kind of people who belonged in her paddock. I thought about what it had cost her to be wrong about that, and about what it had been worth to my daughter to watch her father refuse, quietly, methodically, without anger, to let that be the story that got told. I ran my hand along Joseph's hood. "Thank you," I said quietly. "Both of you." Riley looked up from her laptop. She smiled. "You're welcome, Dad." She went back to her essay. The workshop was warm. The Cuda sat silently in its bay, waiting. There was work to do tomorrow. There would be more work after that. So here is my question for you. Have you ever watched someone with money and status look at someone working honestly with their hands and decide that the working person was less than them? Have you ever been that working person? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one, because the answer says more about the world we actually live in than any other question I could ask. And if this story made you think about the people in your own life who do real work with real skill without ever needing to advertise that they are doing it, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel for more true-to-life stories like this one. And share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that craft, integrity, and quiet competence still mean something in a world that often pretends they don't. Because the truth is this: the people who actually build the world we live in are almost never the people you see in the magazines. They are working in two-bay shops, in industrial parks, in basements and garages across this country, doing real work for real reasons, raising children who watch what they do and learn how to do it themselves. If you are one of those people, keep going. The world needs you more than it knows.